Again, I'm sorry we're starting late, but we're starting now. So please just fasten your seatbelt and listen. Today we are talking about building a data pipeline using Azure Data Factory. And I hope you can see my screen. So I'll be starting the presentation now. My name is Damilola Aremu, and um, a technical support engineer mostly for cloud products. And today I'll walking you through the foundations of building a data pipeline using Azure Data Factory. Please feel free to ask questions if you have any. So, firstly, start with what a data pipeline is. So, if you're familiar with something called pipe or a pipeline, you realize that pipelines are used for moving things, right? So, you can use your pipeline to move fuel or I think fuel is the most common example. But in this case, when we talk about data pipeline, of course, now that we know that pipeline is used to move things, we of course know that a data pipeline is used to move data from one system, excuse me, or one source to another. And then as you move it, you're transforming that data along the way to make it more useful. So think of it like a factory assembly line. Imagine you are at the car assembly where the car enters the line as a skeleton, and by the end of the line, it has everything assembled: the car part, the doors, the side mirrors, and all. So that's what essentially your data pipeline looks like. The data, the raw information enters the pipeline, gets cleaned, organized, and is transformed. And when it gets to the end of the pipeline, it's ready for use, right? So that's what your data pipeline is. So I hope you understand what a data pipeline is if you're asked. And then we talked about building data pipeline in with Azure Data Factory. So, what does Azure Data Factory look like? Azure Data Factory is an integration service, an environment that enables you to create, schedule, and orchestrate data workflows. So, like we said, in your pipeline, when everything is moving, you want it to move flawlessly, and that's what your data factory does. It helps you to orchestrate it, to manage it from beginning to the end. Allows seamless data movement, transformation across multiple data stores. So, like we said before, your data stores are places where you can move data from and to. And the essence of doing this is for analytics purposes, for business intelligence, for data warehousing solutions. So by the time your data had gone through the process of pipeline process, it's ready for use for analyzing, for business intelligence, or even for warehousing, right? And some of the key features of the Azure Data Factory are managed ETL, that you can use it to extract, load, and transform your data, like we said before. So imagine your data entering the pipeline, raw information, and then you clean it. After you clean it, you maybe take out missing data, change it to exactly the format that you need it to be at the destination point. So that's literally what happens in the ETL process. Also, it helps you to orchestrate and automate data movement and transformation. So um, something you would probably do manually before can now be done with Azure Data Factory, automated seamlessly, no interferences, and like you can keep doing it continuously. Lastly, it is fully serverless and scalable. So imagine that you are an organization that maybe wants to deal with that deals with a large data workflow, or that deals with a range of small to large data workflow. You can scale and you can reduce the number of resources that Okay. Um, moving on. I'm sorry if you can hear me. You can just please comment in the chat section. I just want to be sure that I am clear and okay, just give me some minutes. All right. Sorry about that. Now we'll be looking at the architecture of your Azure Data Factory. Number one is your linked services. So, what your linked services looks like is your um, connection. Let me see, like a container that houses what you need to connect to your sources, right? So, it's like your bridge. It's like, excuse me. Okay, yeah. So your linked services is like your bridge, and it acts like your between the ADF and your standard bridge. You connect both together. So they define how you connect to your database. It's like maybe you want to let's use for example, you are a delivery guy. And believe everybody uses a delivery service at some point. So you're a delivery guy. For you to get to your customer's place, you need an address to get there. So just think of your link service like that, the bridge that connects to databases, storage services, or any other service, including authentication details. That's what your linked service is, or you can think of it like a Wi-Fi on your phone. That once you have connected to the Wi-Fi, you can your phone remembers how to reconnect without asking for details. So when you connect to Wi-Fi, you put in the password, and that way, every time you want to connect, it is remembered by your phone, right? So that's what your link service is. Just think of it like that. It's a bridge, or it's like the thing that allows you to connect to all your data sources without missing anything. It keeps the connection details every time you need to access those data sources again. The next thing is the data sets. So data sets are like representation of data utilized in the activities. So, for example, if you want to use like an SQL data, you would have a format, a structure for your SQL data. So just think of a data set like that. They define the schema, the format, the type, the location of the data that you'll be working with in your data factory or when you're creating the pipeline. Now, the pipeline, we have talked about it from the beginning of this session, but I'll just emphasize it again. It is the backbone of the Azure Data Factory, and it literally manages your data workflow from beginning to the end. So just think of your pipeline like what carries data from the beginning of the workflow to the end of the workflow, and why it's carrying the data. Different activities can be performed on the data that is being moved from the beginning to the end. Now, activities are things that you carry out on your data. So they are like steps or tasks that you perform in the Azure Data Factory pipelines. So for example, you could do a copy activity, you could do it copy and move data activity here. So that's something that we'll be trying today in today's session. Now, then we'll be moving or we'll be copying and moving data from one source to another. But there are other activities in the Azure Data Factory, such as Azure Functions and the like. So you can check that out. But of course, in our demo, we would see some of the activities that you can work with. Then we have triggers. And triggers are they are used to initiate like the pipeline execution, and it could be based on different things. It could be based on a schedule, it could be based on a tumbling window, or it could be based on events, right? So three things could be an event. So when an event occurs, it triggers your pipeline to start running. It could be an event. It could be a schedule. That means at so time, please start this pipeline. And it could be a tumbling window trigger that says that okay, every 24 hours, please run this pipeline. So We are currently talking about the Azure Data Factory architecture that makes it possible for us to automate our pipelines. And lastly is the integration runtime. And the integration runtime is very is like one of the powerhouses of your, in fact, maybe the powerhouse of the data factory, because it moves things, right? It's the one that does all of the job in the background, moving the data, running all of the activities in the background. So that's what integration runtime does. It's the it's the messenger, it's the errand boy doing everything in your pipeline. So we've talked about the link service, it's your bridge, talked about the data set that's like represents all of the data that you need to work with, talked about the pipeline, the major backbone in your Azure Data Factory that moves data from one place to another while you're running activities on it. Talked about activities. Activities are things that you do on your data while it goes through the pipeline. Your trigger is what you use to initiate a process in the pipeline, depending on a schedule and event. And lastly, we talked about the runtime, which is like your messenger, and that runs all of the activities and the job that's happening in your Azure Data Factory. So those that's like a comprehensive understanding of what your architecture looks like. So when you get to like your Azure Data Factory, you see all of these things and you're able to say, okay, this is what this does, this is what this does, and this is what this does. Right. So moving to our next slide, we talked about data sources and we have different data sources. In fact, Azure Data Factory supports over 90 data sources. Just imagine that, over 90 data sources, including cloud-based and on-premises system. So you have your on-premises sources like your SQL Server, your Oracle, MySQL file systems. They have your cloud sources, your blob storage, and it's not only limited to Azure services, right? So it extend externally, which is why we talked about the links service, because even when your data source is outside, the Azure Data Factory can connect to it using the linked service, that bridge. Remember the bridge. So we have a whole lot of data sources. If you are about the number and the types of data sources that we need, please you can go to the Microsoft Learn page and you would be able to select. So if you want to do like a job on the Azure Data Factory and you're wondering if it's supported, like your data source, you can of course go to the Microsoft Learn page to see the data sources that are supported by the Azure Data Factory. Okay, so I'm moving to the next slide, and we're talking about real case, real world scenarios or real world cases that where you can apply your Azure Data Factory. Because I mean, it sounds cool saying, okay, we can move data from one place to another using pipeline, but how can we, like, in what scenarios can we use your Azure Data Factory? So number one is your enterprise data warehousing, and I'll just say your ETL is like part of the mod is like major part of modern data warehousing, right? So if you are thinking about what this is, I mean, this is all English on the screen, but I'm just going to use a use case or a scenario that's going to play actively in our minds. So imagine that you have a financial institution, a large one, maybe a bank, a fintech, and they want to integrate data from multiple sources, maybe on-premises database, cloud storage, and even third-party APIs into a centralized data warehouse for analytics and reporting. Just picture that, a bank that has data sources everywhere and they want to import it into a data warehouse for analytics and reporting. Azure Data Factory is perfect for this kind of thing because it can help you extract your data from all of the sources that you have, including legacy systems and cloud platforms, and transform them into, or you can transform that data using Azure Data Bricks. So that's not what we're talking about today, but that's like something that Azure also provides, cleaning and aggregating it into like a standardized format for use, and then you can load it into your Azure Synapse Analytics or maybe your analytic tool, enabling real-time business intelligence. So just imagine that that's something that you can use your Azure Data Factory for enterprise data warehousing. If you have your data in different sources and you need to move it to a point or a place, just know that Azure Data Factory is good for that. And that thing is data migration, which is something that's always common for most organization. You want to move your data from one place to another, and we've talked about pipelines, right? We said pipelines are used for moving data from one place to another while you're performing activities on them. So data migration is another way that ADF is very useful, and I'll give a scenario here too, so we don't just read the English on our slide, right? So just imagine you are a retail industry and you want to maybe move your legacy data to the cloud. This is somewhere where you can use your ADF. And you see, say you want to move your data from on-premises database to the cloud. You just need to connect your ADF to that on-premises database, maybe an SQL server, CSV file, transform the data, and after you transform it, you can also use your analytics tool to, view your data and see what maybe your whatever data analytics job you have done. Lastly, you can use it for integration to data lake. That's our last scenario. And I'm going to, like it says here, facilitate ingesting data from various sources. So we've talked about that. I mean, one of the common things that you see is it can allow you to take data from different sources. And even in our last scenario here, it allows you to take data from different sources and pour it into the Azure Data Lake storage, right? So if you are like an e-commerce site, this is something an e-commerce site can use to integrate data from multiple sources, customer transaction, website logs, inventory, and then you can just put everything into the Azure Data Lakes for analytics and even for machine learning. So ADF, which is your Azure Data Factory, is a broad use, or has a broad use, right? And you can never be stranded using this. Right, so we've talked about all of the real world scenarios, and I mentioned the triggers earlier. I'm just going to run through it again. Your triggers in your pipelines are used to initiate events to start the pipeline. So we talked about the schedule trigger, which is based on a date or a time, and your tumbling window trigger is like, okay, every 24 hours run this pipeline. Event-based triggers are based on this event. It could be a custom event. There's some events already in the system. Run this trigger. And then we have like execution strategies. You have the manual triggering. That's you manually triggering it yourself. You have the automated scheduling, which that means you have set a schedule and saying, okay, based on this schedule, this is how the pipeline will run. And then dependency-based execution. This is based on an event, right? So it's almost the same thing as what we have up there. All right. So I'm just gonna give like a real life example for us to keep this in our head on what your pipeline flow is, right? So I talked about this earlier. Imagine you have a shop, and in that shop you have a cabinet, right? And you want to move that cabinet in your shop to your house. You want to use a delivery man to do that. One of the things that you're definitely going to need as a delivery man to access the shop and the cabinet, especially if the owner is not there, is the address, number one, and the key to the shop, to access the shop. So your key and address is needed to access the shop. Then we need a disassemble info. So imagine that you want to move a cabinet that needs to be disassembled. As the delivery man, you didn't put it there in the first place. So you need to know how to put it pull it apart so that you can transport it safely to its destination. You need the delivery details, um, and then after you get that, you also need the assembly info. When you are getting to your destination, how do you couple that back? Where is my destination, and how do I access my destination? Key and address, and then we have our home. That's our destination. Our cabinet is in our home. So this is the process of moving a cabinet from the shop to the house, right? And I'm just going to relate it soon to how it fits our pipeline flow. Of course, doing this flow, all of this flow is your delivery man, yeah, and then you have the delivery manager who coordinates all of the delivery men that will be doing all of this job. So now, think about what we said before. We talked about the cabinet and the home. So imagine your blob storage is the home that's housing your CSV file, right? And then your key and your address is your linked services. Remember, bridge, the bridge that connects everybody or everything to a data source. Your data set is, we've talked about data set before. It contains the schema, the format, location of the data, the copy activity, this is the activity that you're performing on data that's moving in your pipeline. And then your data set, again, that has been transformed, moving to the destination source. And the destination source is your SQL customer table. So shortly we'll be doing a demo. And the demo we'll be doing is we'll be using the Azure Data Pipeline in Azure Data Factory to move data in a blob storage to a to a SQL table, right? So I'm just going to go through the pipeline flow again, just for emphasis sake. We've talked about moving your cabinet from shop to house. So it's like moving your data from a blob storage to SQL server, right? You have the key and the address. In the case of the data factory, you have the linked services that allows you or tells you where your data is moved from. You have the assembly info, how you deassemble or decouple your cabinets. But in Azure Data Factory, that is seen as your that's your data set, right? And then you have the delivery details, which is your copy activity. That's the activity you're performing on your data. And then the change data set, because like we said, what the pipeline does, it actively helps you to instruct, transform, and load your data, right? So once your data has gone through a copy activity, it is changed, it is transformed, um, moved to, you know, a linked, or rather it's moved to the destination database or destination source. So that's that. So I'll be launching our demo now. If there are no questions before we get into the demo, I'll be going right into the demo. If you have any questions while the demo is running, please feel free to send me back.
Dami, there's no question yet.
Okay, thank
No
you.
question yet. All right, thank you.
Okay, so we're going right into our demo. And this is your Azure portal. Very beautiful, very blue. I'm just going to open the resource group that we will be working with today. Um, so while this is loading, I'm just okay. It's we have it open, and I already have one I've created down, but we'll try to create some of the things that we need, right, to complete this demo together. But yeah, there's some things we created down already. So first things first, you need to create your Azure Data Factory. So in Azure, of course, this is not an infrastructure class, but yeah, you need a resource group. So what I've done here is I've put all of the things I need in one resource group, so I don't have to look for it up and down, right? But yeah, so firstly, let's try to create a. Let's try to create an Azure Data Factory, right? So you come to your create marketplace, you can search for Azure Data Factory. It is quite slow, but let's see. I'm just okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, right. Yeah. So I'm going to search for Data Factory. Right. Okay. And also lag there. So yeah, I think we should be good now. Let's see. Sorry, it's a bit slow, but let me see what we can do. Okay, we have it now. So this is your Azure Data Factory. Very straightforward to create, right? So just click create, and you'd have it running in no time. So I'm just gonna open this so you can know that window so we can. Make sure that all windows are visible. Okay, so I can give this a name. Let me see, ADF Packs 002, and we can put it in the region that we want. I think for this, I'll just use, let's see, West US. Yeah, what's that? Yeah. Okay, great. So there's not so much for the Git configuration. For the purpose of the demo, we are not going to be using it, but in your production environment, you can definitely use Git configuration for, or you can like configure Git later, or if you want to configure it now, so that you can use a Git repo in your Azure Data Factory. You can feel free to do that. Okay, so I don't know, I think you can't see all of my window. Let's see if I can share the entire window. Sure. Let's stop sharing. I just want to share my entire window, so I want to see if you can see the entire window. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Awesome. So we should be able to see all of my window when I keep switching now. So we're back to the data factory and just creating it. So another thing that you need. So for today's demo, we are doing a move of a blob storage to SQL. Blob storage to blob storage to SQL. Right. So one thing we need is our source, which is a blob storage. Right. So in this demo, you would also be creating your source. So this is still creating, but I think it's deploying now. I'm going to come here again and click create, and then we are going to just create a storage account. So a storage account is where you can store your blog. Right? So we are going to search for a storage account and then create one. So what we're doing at the moment for anyone that's just joining is we're trying to create a pipeline to move data from a blob storage to an SQL server or SQL database. Looks like my screen. I don't know if my screen is still showing, but I hope you can still see my screen. Um, please let me know if you can still see my screen. It looks different on my end. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I am creating a storage account. I don't know if you can see that. Just confirm that my screen is still visible because I don't see it on my end. Just a minute, please. Just checking that my screen is at this point. Okay, great. So I can confirm that my screen is visible. So we can create a storage account. I'm going to call it practice demo 2002. Some So I'm going to select our primary service, and of course, like I said, we are moving data from a blob storage to that's our primary service. There is not much to be done here. Any of the changes that we need to do here, we can do after it has been created because we need to change some things in the network. Oh, that's for the DB. Okay. Well, we are all good here. So if you need to change anything, you can change it here. That's if you want public access from all networks or not. You can change it here. So I'm going to review and create this. All right. So two things we have created now. We've created our data factory. We have created our storage account. And in our storage account, we create the blob that will be migrating. And then, okay, so I'm just going to create this. So while that is running, we have our data factory. Okay, so before we go to our data factory studio, I'm going to create one last thing and then we can move. Right, so and the last thing we'll be creating is our SQL server, which is our destination. So we are going to drop our data in the SQL servers. just search for Azure SQL here. Okay, great. Looking for my Azure SQL DB. Okay, creating this as well. Hmm, sorry, yeah, I'm not using this one. Or isn't it Azure SQL DB? Is that just search for that? Okay, SQL database. Okay. So once we create all of these are like necessities for moving our data from one end to another. So sorry, it's taking a while. I have them created though, but I don't want us to just rush into showing you things. So I'm just showing you what I've done before. Right? Showing you what I've done before this. All right, so I'm just gonna give this a name, PackDB002, and okay, I think we're all good here. We can fix networking later, but yeah, we're good here. You can change depending on your data workflow. You can actually change this. That's your SQL database type. If you need something bigger or something smaller, but I'm just gonna do this for now. I mean, I'll be clearing everything after this demo, cleaning up everything. So, all right. So while that is creating, I'm going to come to our um, go to resource and just walk us through what it looks like. Right. So while that is creating, just go to what we have already. Okay, this is our resource. Oh, this is our blog. If I can go home and go back to our resource group. Okay, so I'm coming to my first one, the one I created already, so I can show you how it looks. Okay, so we launched the studio and very fancy stuff. So you're going into the Azure Data Factory studio, and we'll just look at what the link services and everything looks like, and then we'll just run through it together. It's just taking a while to load. Let's see, is this complete? This is still deploying. So I'm not sure why this is slow. Maybe it's my network. Maybe just because I'm waiting. Well, okay, yeah, it's opened now. Right, so this is the Azure Data Factory Studio, and we've gone through how to create it. So when you want to start, you start with the author function, right? So because you're authoring the pipeline, and then go to your pipelines. Oh, this should actually have something in it. Is this? Did I fix something? Okay, so looks like my pipeline is missing. Okay, but yeah, this is our pipeline, the one we talked about, the backbone for Azure Data Factory. This is our linked service. So I have two linked service that I had created here previously. We'll create one together, but we have two link services because, like I said, the link service is the one that allows where you're taking data from and where you're taking data to. So in the case where you're taking from, you need a link service for the source and a link service for the destination. That's why we have two linked services here. We talked about the integration runtime. Um, we have a default one. By default, Azure gives you the auto resolve integration runtime. But depending on the job that you're trying to do, you could be moving data from maybe an SSIS environment. So you might want to create one that will do that for you. You can see here Azure SSIS environment. So depending on the particular job you want to do, you might need to create your very own integration runtime. But for us, we're going to be using the auto resolve integration runtime today. Okay, so next we have talked about link services integration runtime. Coming back to your pipelines, we have our pipelines, so we can create a new one just to see what it looks like. So you can just, this is like creating a new one, pipeline one. I'm not creating a new one here because we have a different data factory that we'll be working with. And then we have our data sets, like we talked about. The data set is the one that keeps the structure of your data. So if you remember at the beginning of this presentation, we talked about all of the architectures of the Azure Data Factory, and I've shown you the pipeline. We have seen the data set, which we'll all be working with today. We have looked at our link service, our integration runtime, and then for activities, activities are all of the things that you see here. So you have your move and transform. We're doing a copy data activity today. We have your Synapse, your Azure Data Factory, sorry, Azure Data Explorer, Azure Function. All of these are activities that you can perform on your data. So I'll just go back to the one that we created for today's demo. Let's see, we should have that somewhere and it should be ready for use. I hope that network allows so we can move very fast and there's no delay. So I'm going to close the studio that we use for our walkthrough. I'm going to open our own studio now, this one that we just created in this class. So, like I said, it takes a while to come up, but once it's up, it's running. Just wait for it. Waiting. Awesome. We have it opened. Great. So now that we have it opened, we'll start our authoring. So just come here, author. First thing, you can create a new pipeline. So we'll create a new pipeline and give it a name. So I'm just going to call it a practice pipeline. And practice means like practical, right? 002. So we have our pipeline ready for use right here. But before we use our pipeline, we need to create some of the other things that we spoke about. Like, for example, your linked service, because how would your pipeline know where to take data to and where to take the data from, right? So we need to create that. But I just need to go to my storage account. I have not imported the data that we'll be working with today, and that needs to be in a blob. So we're just going to come back here and do that. Right. So I'm looking for my blob. Um, Trying that create today. So I should have too many. Okay, I think this is it. So I'm just going to open a new tab. So this is our storage account. We created one earlier, so we don't get too confused. This is our storage account window. We created it earlier, if you remember. And what we want to do here is import data that we will be working with. So I'm going to use a new data here. I used a CAS data set, but I have downloaded one from Cargo. So I'm just going to call the blob an input blob and then create it. So it's going to get created. Awesome. That didn't even take too long, right? So I'm going to upload my file. I have a file. I hope I can find it. Oops. Okay, yeah. So this is it. So this is a stock price for Google, right? This is a stock price CSV for Google. So that's what we are working with today. I'm just going to click on it so that we can see the data we are working with. So come to edit and you can see the data. Okay, so it's just date, open, high, low, close, volume. I'm sure those guys that trade stock will understand this, but we are using it for the purpose of data analysis today. of for the purpose of our practical in the Azure Data Factory. But yeah, this is what we'll be working with. I can show you data in the other factory as well. But yeah, let's focus on this first. So now we have our data in. So we'll be creating our first link service. The first link service is for our source. So our source, remember, is a blob storage. So I'm going to search for blob here. There it is. So it depends on what your source is. If your source is a different thing, please search for that thing. If it's an SQL database, you can come here and search for. Let's see. And if it's Azure, okay, I'm sure because I have this there. But yeah, all of this you can search through. You find what you need. Right. So I'm going to give this a name so I don't get confused. Blob start. Let's change this to practice. Blob. Mhm. Okay. I'm going to change this to Azure too. And okay, so here I'll be using my Azure subscription. Yes. So what we're doing is we're just selecting the blob that we created already. I think it's this one. Yeah, come on. So if it works when we do a test connection, it should say. Okay, so we have connection successful. So what we just did here was we are creating a link service to get data from our blob. That's the one we created previously, and we're using a connection string for for a safer, more secure method. You could use the Azure Key Vault and hide your secrets there. But for this, we're just using your connection string and all good, and then we can create our link service. We're good here. So permit me. While this is creating, I'll be switching to our SQL DB. I hope this is not confusing, but we are going to go to our SQL DB, and that's our destination for our data, right? Remember, the purpose of this demo is to move data from the blob to SQL server. So we created a server, but we have not created our DB yet, right? So that's something that we need to create. Did I create that already? Let's see. Oh, okay, yeah, I have that created. It's just under my same server. So we have a DB already. Great. Right. So what I'll do with our DB is I need to create a table. It's going to be an empty table. If you're familiar with SQL, you would know that you would have like a DB and then you have a table in the DB. So we want to create a table to store our data. So I'm just going to sign in to my server. I hope you can't see my password. If you can, please close your eyes. Um, right. I hope I can remember this. um, okay, I hope this works. Oh, great. Sorry. I know I have it written down somewhere, so I'm just gonna try. Okay, yeah, so it's correct. My password is correct. Great. I'm not so old after all. My password is correct, but I need to add the IP address for my client to the firewall so that it works. So we're just gonna go to security. Let's see. Do we have networking here? Just gonna search for networking. Let's see. So normally it will show here in the network. Let's see. Okay, just click this and then it updates it by itself. But I need to get the file to strange. Okay, works now. comment just before we go to create our table. Just need to fix this. Not sure if I have it here already. Not sure. So I just want to show you something about your SQL server or DB. It's quite important that this is checked. So just trying, yeah. So we're coming to networking here. Okay, great. So my IP address was added here so I can access the SQL server. And now this is, of course, it's not every time you're going. This is if you are going to be accessing or you're going to be using an SQL server in your practicals. But yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. So you should allow Azure services and resources to access this server. That has to be checked if you're moving anything to your SQL. So I just wanted to show you that before we create our table. So now we can go to our database and then create that table finally. Okay. I'm guessing I'm running out of time, so I will be fast with this. Right. Um, so I'm going to our query editor. A query editor allows you to write query here. I'm going to have to enter my password again. Um, okay, see. That should be correct. Great. So just create our SQL table. I have the query already, so we don't have to wait while I create that. Okay. So we can run this. Let's see. I don't have this. Create that. Which one? Oh, okay, sorry. It's probably not the right code. Comment. Okay, I'm just going to check this. Sorry, let's just check this query. I think it's not correct. It's probably for different reason. Alright, just make that fast. So I'm just trying to create the table. This is taking a while. This is one of the reasons why we don't do that. Okay, let's hope this one works. Let's see. Create tables, the prices, dates. Why is open? I might have to change that. Let's see. Open CL. Let's check this. Okay, that works. All right, so that worked eventually. So I just changed, added columns so that it works. So we have our table and we have our DB. So if we come here, we have the stock price table created. Great. Now we can go back to our Azure Data Factory and create the second link service. And this time around, we're creating it for the destination. So I could either search for SQL or just continue. Okay, so like I said before, we'll be using the default runtime by Azure. Still using my server name, my DB name. I think it's this. All right, great. So we're using SQL authentication, and I will just remember my admin. Okay, it's password again. Uh, if I remember the password. Okay, let's test connection. See if my password is correct. If my password is not correct, yeah, the connection failed. So, funny thing of my keyboard is the keys are not rightly placed. Let's see if this works. Oh, I created it without testing. Might have to close that and create it again because if not, probably be running in circles. All right, I'm going to try it again because I didn't test my connection to be sure that my password works. Right. I'm just selecting the server name again. Hmm, okay, that's DB name. All right, let's try this again for a second time. It's not such a difficult password. Oh, awesome. Great. So the password is fine and the connection here is successful. I think it's very important to do this. If not, you might have failures at the end when you're trying to move your data. So we have our link services now, and that means that we can go ahead to create other things once this is done. Anyways. Good. I forgot to rename this, but please forgive me. So we can go back to our pipeline. We have our linked services now that we know where to go, right? You can now try to bring in your data sets because now you know where to go. So we're going to create a new data set. First, to be creating a data set for our source. So our source is a blob storage. It is a CSV file. If you come here, you can see that it is indeed a CSV file. So I'll be selecting the meta text and I'll be selecting our link service, the one we created for our source. I do actually have headers there, right? And then I would just select our file from our blob storage. Okay, great. So we have it in, um, and I can preview my data to be sure. So here is my data. And yeah, if I had a different delimiter, maybe tab new or something, I can select here, but for CSV files, usually commas, so great. Second, we'll be creating the second data set for your destination. Uh, I hope it's not taking too much of the time, but we are almost done, promise you. So I'm just going to change this and remember the table we created, stock prices, that's it. So we're bringing our data set for our destination too. So we have two data sets, one for your blob and one for your SQL, right? All created. Now I think we're ready to move our data from one place to another. So you come to your pipeline and remember um, our presentation, the flow. We have done the linked service, we have done the data set, now the copy activity. So from here, drag your copy data to the work body. And what's our source? Our source is the blob. So we select this. And then our sink, where you are syncing your data like a ship, is your Azure SQL table. Awesome. Now you just check the mapping to be sure that everything is fine. So we're just checking. And okay, so you can see, wow, this is going to be a lot. That's strange. Destination is good, but my mapping source is empty. Okay, so this is open. This is I hello close volume and date. That is all found. Okay, great. All right, so one thing we can also do is do a fault tolerance here, which is if there are incompatible rows, you can't skip that, right? But that is not good if you're on live data because you don't want to skip a row. If you skip a row, it could cause inconsistency in your data. So I'm just going to create a log here, a log file. All right, so then you can't debug. A debug would run to make you see if everything works fine. And if there's an error, you see it just right here. So this shouldn't take time, at most 17 seconds. We should be done with this. So while we're waiting, I'm just checking if we have any questions. So we are almost done with this practical. Just refresh. Okay, so it succeeded, which is good, but we need to be sure that our file move actually succeeded. So we need to go back to our to check that. I saw an error. All right, so just let's confirm that our data is actually here, right? I'm going to select top 100 rows and see if we have anything. So this is our data. Everything is in.
Hello, Dami.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we have 5 minutes more. Yes, we have
Yeah.
5 minutes more.
This is the last part of it already. So we can see that we have been able to move our data from the blob storage to the SQL server, and we are all good on this, right? So that's basically how to move your data using the pipeline process in Azure Data Factory. And what we did today was we used it to move data from a blob to SQL server. So that's that. We actually confirmed that it succeeded. So that's all. That's all with all of the pipeline. Thank you so much for listening. If there are no questions, any questions so far? Mr. Popolo, I'm done.
Okay. We still don't have any questions yet. But thank you so much, Damilola, for this beautiful presentation. It has been an awesome presentation. I'm very, very sure that our audience will be happy and also go through it at their leisure time.
Yeah.
So we know there are a lot of activities going on, but the advantage of this session is that they are all recorded, which means we can go back and watch from the beginning to the end. Before we come back to you next time, please, I want to remind us that tomorrow we have another section which is on soft skills. We normally have two sections every weekend. On Saturdays, we have technical sections, which are from the hours of 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Saturdays. And on Sundays, we normally have soft skills between the hours of 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. So in the global output now, people are looking for uh, whoever that can balance up in terms of technical know-how and soft skills. And that is why we are looking at the possibility of enhancing our technicalities with a possibility of a quite a number of soft skills. And I want to implore you that you join us tomorrow for another episode of our soft skills development. Tomorrow it will be on negotiation skill. Damilola, have you experienced that somebody asks you, please, I want to give you a job. How much is this job?
Oh, yes,
I
I
have had
understand
experience
that.
that yeah, some people are lost. They don't even know how to evaluate their deliveries. So
Yes, I
maybe in time
understand.
of output, maybe in time of timing, maybe in time of all deliverables that they need to put together in order to, to make a cost for the value they want to offer. So tomorrow we'll be unveiling so much about negotiation skills. So thank you, Damilola, for featuring today. I
Thank you,
want to see you
Sam.
some other time.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye,
All
Sam.
right, everyone, you have a nice time. All right, bye bye.